Ethan Morgan stood nervously outside the sleek glass facade of Collins Enterprises. The sun shone brightly, casting long shadows on the pavement, but inside him he felt an impending storm. Today was critical. It was not just another job interview, but a potential escape from the suffocating cycle of unemployment that had gripped him since his mother's passing. With each passing day, the weight of her absence pressed down harder, intertwining with his own feelings of inadequacy. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but his heart raced as he glanced at the watch on his wrist. Time was ticking away. As he waited, Ethan's fingers brushed against the delicate silver chain resting beneath his shirt. It was his mother's necklace, a small locket that had been her prized possession. He hoped it would bring him the luck he so desperately needed. His mother had always said, "You carry my strength with you, Ethan." The phrase echoed in his mind, a mantra that had fueled his determination to keep trying, to keep pushing forward despite the odds stacked against him. He fumbled with the locket, feeling its cool metal against his skin, grounding him momentarily. "Okay, Ethan, you can do this," he muttered to himself, shaking off the anxiety that threatened to consume him. He imagined his mother's encouraging smile, a beacon of hope in his darkest moments. With a final deep breath, he stepped forward, his shoes clicking against the polished floor as he entered the lobby of the building. Inside, the atmosphere was a mix of high-tech modernity and corporate professionalism. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the faint sound of keyboards clicking in the background. Ethan approached the reception desk, where a young woman with a bright smile greeted him. "Good morning. How can I help you?" she asked, her voice cheerful and welcoming. "I have an interview with Mr. Collins," Ethan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Of course. Just take a seat and I'll let him know you're here," she said, gesturing to a row of sleek chairs. Ethan settled into one of the chairs, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced around the room, observing the other candidates who were also waiting for their chance. Each one seemed more polished and prepared than he felt. He shifted in his seat, anxiety coursing through him as he mentally rehearsed his answers to potential questions. Suddenly, he felt a sharp tug of his necklace, and he instinctively clutched it. Memories flooded back, his mother sitting beside him, fastening the chain around his neck on his 18th birthday, her eyes sparkling with pride. "This will remind you that you're never alone, Ethan. No matter where life takes you, I'll always be with you," she had said. The memory brought warmth to his heart, and he tried to focus on that feeling. After what felt like an eternity, a door opened, and a stern-looking man in his 50s emerged. Mr. Collins had an air of authority, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed back, and a well-tailored suit that spoke of years of experience. He scanned the room until his gaze landed on Ethan. "Ethan Morgan, please, come in," he said, his voice commanding, yet not unkind. Ethan stood and followed Mr. Collins into the office. The room was filled with expensive furnishings, large windows that let in natural light, and a view of the bustling city below. As he took a seat across from Mr. Collins, he felt both intimidated and exhilarated. "Thank you for coming in today," Mr. Collins began, his eyes studying Ethan intently. "Let's get started. Tell me about yourself." Ethan cleared his throat, recalling the countless times he had practiced this moment in front of the mirror. "I recently graduated with a degree in business administration. I've been looking for opportunities to apply my skills and contribute to a team. I'm very passionate about marketing and innovation," he said, his voice gaining confidence as he spoke. Mr. Collins nodded, listening attentively. "That's a good start. Tell me about a challenge you faced and how you overcame it." Ethan took a moment to gather his thoughts, and as he spoke, he felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. The interview progressed smoothly, with Mr. Collins asking insightful questions that allowed Ethan to showcase his strengths. Just when Ethan thought he might actually land this job, Mr. Collins's gaze drifted down to the necklace, peeking out from beneath Ethan's shirt. "Interesting necklace you have there," he remarked, his tone shifting slightly. "What's the story behind it?" Ethan hesitated, a knot tightening in his stomach. Should he share its significance? He decided to be honest. "It belonged to my mother. She gave it to me on my 18th birthday. It's very special to me." Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with newfound intensity. "Your mother, you say? What was her name?" "Claire Morgan," Ethan replied, confusion washing over him as he noticed the flicker of recognition in Mr. Collins' eyes. Claire Morgan, Mr. Collins repeated, almost to himself. I remember her. We used to be, acquaintances, many years ago. His expression became inscrutable, a mixture of surprise and something else, something darker. Ethan felt a rush of emotions, curiosity intertwining with apprehension. You knew her? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Collins's demeanor shifted subtly, the warmth from earlier replaced by a guardedness. Yes, we ran in the same circles. It's been a long time. The air in the room thickened with unspoken tension, and Ethan felt as if he had stumbled upon a hidden chapter of his mother's past, a chapter she had never shared with him. I hope she was well remembered, Ethan ventured, searching for a way to navigate this unexpected turn. Mr. Collins's gaze held Ethan's for a moment longer than necessary, as if weighing the implications of his next words. She was a talented woman, he said carefully. But sometimes, the past has a way of catching up with us. The interview continued, but Ethan sensed an undercurrent of unease. Questions about his skills and experiences morphed into something deeper, as though Mr. Collins was searching for a connection that transcended the professional. Each word felt loaded, as if they were both dancing around a truth neither was ready to confront. As they wrapped up the interview, Mr. Collins's expression softened momentarily. I appreciate your time today, Ethan. I'll be in touch soon, he said, but the finality in his voice left Ethan with a lingering sense of uncertainty. Ethan stood, feeling a mix of hope and dread. As he walked out of the office, he couldn't shake the feeling that today had unearthed more than just an interview. It had opened a door to secrets he didn't yet understand. Once outside, he paused, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. The sun still shone, but the warmth felt distant now. He instinctively touched the locket around his neck, feeling the cool metal against his skin. What had Mr. Collins seen in that necklace? Why had it prompted such a reaction? As he walked toward the subway, Ethan's mind raced with questions. The necklace, once a symbol of his mother's love and strength, now felt like a key to a mystery he had never anticipated. He was determined to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden within his mother's past, even if it meant confronting a legacy he didn't fully understand. The thought of it filled him with both dread and a flicker of determination. He needed to know the truth. With each step, Ethan resolved to dig deeper, to connect the dots between his family's history and the enigmatic man he had just interviewed with. Today might not have brought him a job, but it had sparked a fire within him, a fire that demanded to know the truth about Claire Morgan, her necklace, and the shadows that lingered over them both. Ethan hesitated, a knot tightening in his stomach, as he prepared to share the story behind the necklace. The office felt both oppressive and strangely intimate, the walls closing in as he sensed Mr. Collins's keen interest. This necklace, Ethan began, his voice wavering slightly, was a gift from my mother on my 18th birthday. She always told me it carried her strength. It's the only thing I have left of her. Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled thoughtfully beneath his chin. The glint in his eyes deepened, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a sentimental piece of jewelry to his potential employer. It's beautiful, Mr. Collins finally said, his voice low and measured. Your mother must have meant a great deal to you. She did, Ethan replied, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. She was my rock. After she passed away, it's been hard to find my footing. I thought maybe this necklace could bring me some luck today. Mr. Collins nodded, but his gaze was distant, as if he were seeing something far beyond the walls of his office. You mentioned she gave it to you on your 18th birthday. What kind of woman was she? Ethan felt the weight of nostalgia wash over him, the memories rushing back like a tide. She was strong, independent. She always encouraged me to follow my dreams, no matter how far-fetched they seemed. But after my father left, things changed. Life became a struggle, and she worked multiple jobs just to keep us afloat. I don't think she ever got the recognition she deserved. A flicker of something, sympathy, understanding, passed over Mr. Collins's face. It sounds like she was an incredible person. It's unfortunate that life can be so unfair. Ethan swallowed hard, sensing that the conversation was shifting in a way he hadn't anticipated. Yeah, it really is. I've been trying to make a fresh start. That's why I'm here today. This job, it means everything to me. Mr. Collins leaned forward, his eyes suddenly sharp. And what exactly do you know about this company? Why do you want to work here? Ethan took a breath, gathering his thoughts. I've done my research. Collins Enterprises has a reputation for innovation and integrity. I want to be part of a team that values hard work and creativity. I believe I can contribute a lot, especially with my background in marketing. The atmosphere shifted again. Mr. Collins's expression hardened slightly, an imperceptible change that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. Interesting. You mentioned your mother earlier. Did she have any connection to this company? Ethan's heart raced, the question catching him off guard. Not that I know of. She didn't talk about her past much. After my father left, she seemed to want to distance herself from everything that reminded her of him. I always assumed it was just the way she coped. Mr. Collins's brow furrowed. You'd be surprised how deep family ties can run. Sometimes the past can come back to haunt us. Before Ethan could respond, the interview took an abrupt turn. Mr. Collins's phone buzzed insistently on the desk, breaking the tension. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted to one of concern. He quickly silenced the device, but Ethan could see the gears turning in his boss's mind. Let's take a break for now, Mr. Collins said, suddenly standing. I'll be in touch. Ethan felt the weight of Mr. Collins's words. He stood, his mind racing, and made his way to the door. As he reached for the handle, he overheard Mr. Collins speaking with a colleague just outside the office. Their voices were hushed, but Ethan caught snippets of their conversation. Family connection? The necklace? It can't be... Ethan's pulse quickened. What did Mr. Collins mean by family connection? He stepped back, pressing his ear against the door, straining to catch more of the conversation. It's been years, but if it's true, we need to act quickly, Mr. Collins said. Ethan pulled away from the door, confusion swirling in his mind. He had to know more. The interview, which had felt like a lifeline just moments ago, now seemed to be a door to something darker. He stepped out into the bustling street, his thoughts racing as he made his way home. Once inside his small apartment, Ethan felt the walls closing in. He dropped onto the couch, the necklace resting heavily against his chest. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Grabbing his laptop, he began to search for information about Mr. Collins and the company, hoping to uncover the roots of the unsettling feeling that had taken hold of him. As he dove deeper into the search, he stumbled upon articles detailing Collins Enterprises' history. Some pieces were flattering, praising the company's innovations and contributions to the community, while others hinted at darker times, an old scandal involving the Collins family and a mysterious theft. Ethan's stomach twisted as he read about the rift that had formed within the Collins family after the incident, a rift that had never fully healed. He clicked on a particularly intriguing article, which mentioned a family heirloom, a necklace eerily similar to the one around his neck. His heart raced as he read through the details, uncovering a family scandal that had left a stain on both the Collins and Morgan families. The article claimed that Ethan's mother had been accused of stealing the heirloom during a family gathering, an accusation that had led to her estrangement from her family. What? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. The pieces began to align in his mind, and he felt a cold dread seep into his bones. Could his mother have been wrongfully accused? What if the necklace was more than just a token of love? What if it held the key to a family secret that had been buried for decades? He continued to dig, scouring through old newspaper clippings and public records, feeling as though he were unearthing a grave. As he pieced together the story, it became clear that the necklace wasn't simply a cherished keepsake. It was a symbol of betrayal, blame, and a past that refused to stay buried. Just as he was about to give up, Ethan caught sight of something in the corner of his screen. An article mentioned a hidden diary belonging to his mother. It claimed that she had evidence that could clear her name and expose the truth about the necklace. Ethan's heart raced. If he could find this diary, it might not only shed light on his mother's innocence, but could also unveil the truth that Mr. Collins seemed so desperate to keep hidden. Determined, Ethan closed his laptop and made his way to the attic. He had seen old boxes filled with his mother's belongings, and if there was a chance, the slightest chance, that the diary was among them, he had to look. The attic was dimly lit, dust particles dancing in the air as he climbed the creaky stairs. Memories flooded him as he sifted through the boxes, each item a reminder of the life they had shared. He rummaged through old clothes, childhood toys, and faded photographs, his heart heavy with longing. Time seemed to stretch as he searched, the shadows of the past closing in around him. Just as he was about to give up hope, his eyes landed on a small, ornate box tucked in the corner. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he knelt beside it. The box was locked, but something about it felt significant. He pulled at the lid, but it wouldn't budge. Frantically, he searched for a way to open it, feeling a sense of urgency coursing through him. This could be it, the key to understanding his mother's past, to finding the truth. Inside the box, he found letters and photographs, but no diary. Frustration bubbled within him as he rifled through the contents. He was about to give up when he spotted one letter addressed to none other than Mr. Collins. The handwriting was familiar, and as he opened the letter, a chill swept through him. The letter revealed secrets about the necklace, discussing its connection to a crime that could implicate others. Ethan's hands shook as he read the words, a realization dawning on him. The truth was far more complicated than he had imagined, and if Mr. Collins had been involved, then everything Ethan thought he knew about his mother, and about himself, was about to change. Suddenly his phone buzzed, breaking through the fog of confusion that had settled around him. He glanced at the screen and saw Mr. Collins's name. "Ethan, you need to come back. There's something you don't know about the necklace. And your mother." The line went dead before Ethan could respond, leaving him in stunned silence. His heart raced as he stared at the phone, the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. What did Mr. Collins mean? What more was there to uncover? The truth seemed to be slipping through his fingers, and as he stood amidst the echoes of the past, he realized that he was on the verge of a revelation that could unravel everything he thought he understood about his family and the legacy his mother had left behind. Ethan stood outside Mrs. Hargrove's quaint little cottage, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. He felt a storm brewing in his gut, a mixture of dread and anticipation. The revelation about his mother's necklace had shaken him to his core. How could something so innocuous be tied to such dark family secrets? He took a deep breath, steeling himself before stepping up to the front door and knocking with a hesitant hand. "Ethan, my dear boy." Mrs. Hargrove's voice was warm, but there was an edge of worry as she opened the door. The elderly woman's eyes sparkled with kindness, yet Ethan could see the concern etched across her face. "Come in, come in. You look as if you've seen a ghost." He entered the cozy living room, filled with the scent of lavender and freshly brewed tea. "Mrs. Hargrove, I need to talk to you. It's about my mother and the necklace." Her expression shifted instantly, the warmth replaced with a solemnity that made Ethan's heart race. "Oh, Ethan, I was afraid you would come to this. Sit down, dear. We need to discuss some things." Ethan took a seat on the faded floral couch, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. Mrs. Hargrove settled across from him, her hands trembling slightly as she poured tea into delicate china cups. "I've known your mother since she was a little girl," she began, her voice soft but firm. "There are things about her past that you don't know, things that have haunted our families for decades." "I found out that the necklace belonged to Mr. Collins's family," Ethan blurted out, his voice tinged with desperation. "They think my mother stole it, but I don't believe she did. I need to know the truth, Mrs. Hargrove. What really happened?" Mrs. Hargrove sighed heavily, her eyes misting over. "That necklace was indeed a family heirloom, passed down through generations. When it went missing, your mother was unjustly accused. The scandal tore our families apart, Ethan. I believe she was framed." Ethan's mind raced. "Framed? By whom?" "Your mother was a strong-willed woman, but she had enemies, people who were jealous of her success, her beauty, her spirit. At the time, she was dating someone from the Collins family, and there were rumors surrounding their relationship. It's possible someone wanted to tarnish her name." A wave of anger washed over Ethan. "So she was a victim of their jealousy? And Mr. Collins never tried to clear her name? Family loyalty often blinds people to the truth, Mrs. Hargrove replied, her voice thick with emotion. Mr. Collins was too young to understand the implications of what was happening. He was caught between his family's reputation and the love he had for your mother. Ethan felt a mixture of compassion and frustration for Mr. Collins. But now, after all these years, he's in a position of power. He could help me clear her name. Maybe if I go back to him, I can prove that she was innocent. Mrs. Hargrove shook her head gently. Ethan, be careful. Digging into the past can unearth wounds that have long been buried. You must be prepared for what you might find. Determined, Ethan stood up abruptly, the tea forgotten on the table. I have to try, for my mother. I can't let her legacy be tarnished by lies. He left Mrs. Hargrove's home with a renewed sense of purpose, his heart pounding with the weight of his family's history. As he walked back to the office of Collins Enterprises, he replayed the conversation in his mind, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. He could feel the aura of the necklace around his neck, a symbol of hope and a reminder of the injustices that needed to be corrected. Before he reached the office, he hesitated outside, his nerves creeping back in. What if Mr. Collins refused to listen? What if he dismissed Ethan as just another desperate job seeker? But then he thought of his mother, the strength she had instilled in him, the courage she had shown throughout her life. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The receptionist greeted him with a polite smile, directing him to Mr. Collins's office. He's expecting you, she said, her tone professional but warm. As Ethan walked through the sleek, glass-walled office, he could feel the weight of the necklace against his chest, reminding him of his mother's strength. He knocked on the door and entered when beckoned. Mr. Collins looked up from his desk, surprise flickering in his eyes. Ethan, I didn't expect to see you back so soon. I hope everything is all right. Ethan's heart raced. He needed to be direct. Mr. Collins, I need to talk to you about the necklace. It belonged to my mother, and I believe she was wrongfully accused of stealing it. Mr. Collins's expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and concern. Ethan, that's quite a serious accusation. I thought we had put that behind us. Put it behind us? Ethan felt his frustration bubbling over. My mother was innocent. Mrs. Hargrove told me everything. You were too young to know the truth, but now you're in a position to help me clear her name. Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. I never thought of it that way. I was just a boy when it happened. And my family, they were relentless. I thought your mother had taken the necklace, but I never truly believed it. Ethan's heart raced. This was the opening he needed. Then let's find the truth. Help me prove her innocence, and I'll do everything I can to work for you. I want to help rebuild our family's reputations. Mr. Collins's gaze softened, and he nodded slowly. Let's meet later to discuss this further. I think it's time we uncovered the truth about what happened all those years ago. Relief washed over Ethan. He had taken the first step towards clearing his mother's name, but he knew this was just the beginning. As he left the office, he felt the weight of the necklace lift slightly. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Ethan sat across from Mr. Collins in the bustling cafe, the air thick with the aroma of roasted coffee beans and the low hum of conversation. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the table. But Ethan felt cold, as if the chill of his mother's past had seeped in with him. Mr. Collins, a man who had seemed so distant and stern in the office, now appeared vulnerable. His brow furrowed as he spoke, and there was a sincerity in his voice that Ethan had not expected. The necklace, Mr. Collins began, his fingers nervously tracing the rim of his coffee cup. It was stolen during a family gathering years ago. I was just a boy then, but I remember the chaos it caused. My family was devastated, and your mother, she was wrongfully accused. I never believed the rumors, but I was too young to stand up against my family. Ethan's heart raced. A mixture of anger and relief surged within him. So, you knew my mother was innocent all along? Why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you help her? Mr. Collins looked down, his expression a mix of regret and shame. Family loyalty often blinds people to the truth, Ethan. I was scared. I didn't want to upset my parents or lose their approval. I thought time would reveal the truth, but it only buried it deeper. He sighed, the weight of his confession hanging heavy in the air. I regret my inaction every day. Ethan leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by the revelations. The necklace, a symbol of his mother's love and strength, was also a key to a past riddled with injustice. He fought to keep his emotions in check. So, what can we do now? How can we clear her name? Mr. Collins met his gaze, a flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. We need to find the truth. If we can track down the people who were there that day, they might remember what really happened. We can piece together the story and finally give your mother the justice she deserves. As they spoke, Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. Do you remember who was there? Anyone from your family? Not everyone is willing to talk, Mr. Collins replied, a hint of bitterness creeping into his tone. Some have buried the past so deeply they don't want to dig it up again. But I can try to reach out to a few. Maybe start with my sister. She was old enough to understand the events at the time. Ethan nodded, feeling a spark of hope. I want to help. I can talk to my mother's friends, see if they remember anything. Just then, Ethan noticed Mr. Collins's phone buzzing incessantly on the table. The screen lit up, revealing a name that sent a shiver down his spine. Margaret Hargrove. It was a name he recognized, a name his mother had spoken of with a mix of affection and sadness. He had met Mrs. Hargrove only once, yet her presence lingered in his memories of his mother's stories. Mr. Collins, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper, who is Margaret Hargrove to you? Mr. Collins' expression changed in an instant. The warmth dissipated, replaced by a coldness that sent a jolt of apprehension through Ethan. She's a family friend, he replied, but the way he leaned back in his chair, the way his eyes darted to the side, told Ethan that there was much more to the story. Why are you so tense? Ethan pressed, unable to shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon something significant. What does she have to do with this? Nothing. I mean, she's just someone from the past. Mr. Collins's voice faltered, and he quickly grabbed his phone, silencing it with a decisive tap. Let's focus on the necklace, Ethan. That's what's important. Ethan wasn't convinced. He could sense the tension in the air, like a taut string ready to snap. If she knows something about my mother, then she is important. We can't ignore that. Mr. Collins shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing slightly. I said we should focus on the necklace. Your mother's innocence is what matters here. Ethan felt a wave of frustration wash over him. You're not being honest with me, Mr. Collins. If there's something you know about Margaret or about that day, we need to discuss it. We can't clear my mother's name if we're hiding from the truth. Silence hung between them, thick and suffocating. Mr. Collins's gaze hardened, and for a moment, Ethan thought he might refuse to answer. But then, the man sighed, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of his secrets had become too much to bear. Fine, he said, his voice low. Margaret was part of that family gathering. She was there when the necklace was stolen. But Ethan, this is delicate. She has her own reasons for not wanting to revisit that day. I can't promise she'll talk. Ethan's heart raced. We need to try. If she has any information, it could be the key to proving my mother's innocence. Just think about it. If we can find out who the real thief was, it could change everything. Mr. Collins nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. You're right. I'll reach out to her, but you need to be prepared. If she does decide to talk, it could stir up a lot of old wounds, not just for her, but for me and my family too. Ethan leaned forward, determination etched on his face. I'm ready for whatever it takes. My mother deserves this. We both do. As they finished their drinks, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The conversation had opened doors he never knew existed, and he was ready to step through them. He glanced at the necklace resting against his chest, and for the first time, it felt less like a burden and more like a beacon of hope. After they parted ways outside the cafe, Ethan walked with a spring in his step, his mind racing with possibilities. The truth was finally within reach, and he could sense that unraveling the mystery of the necklace in his mother's past would lead to more than just clearing her name. It would be a journey of self-discovery and redemption. But as he walked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were treading on dangerous ground. The past had a way of creeping back in, and he was painfully aware that some secrets were buried for a reason. As he approached his apartment building, he couldn't help but glance back over his shoulder, half expecting to see shadows lurking behind him. He shivered, brushing off the feeling as paranoia. After all, he had finally taken the first step towards uncovering the truth. Yet deep down, he felt a gnawing sense of dread. What if digging into the past unearthed more than just the truth about his mother? What if it revealed dark secrets that would change everything he thought he knew? As he unlocked the door to his apartment, Ethan steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The quest for truth had begun, and there was no turning back now. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his fingers nervously drumming against the wooden surface of the cafe table. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee surrounded him, but he barely noticed. His mind raced, replaying the conversation he'd just had with Mr. Collins. The older man had been variously helpful and evasive, and Ethan felt the tension in the air as thick as the steam rising from his cup. "Why won't you just tell me the truth?" Ethan had asked, his voice strained with frustration. Mr. Collins had merely sighed, his brow furrowed as he stared into his untouched drink. "Ethan, some things are best left buried," Mr. Collins had replied, his tone a mix of caution and concern. "You don't know the full story. You need to understand." Ethan had cut him off, unable to contain his mounting anger. "Understand what? That my mother was accused of stealing something that was never hers to begin with? That I've been living with this shadow over my life for years?" The older man had looked at him, his expression a mixture of regret and sympathy. "It's not just about the necklace, Ethan. It's about family dynamics, loyalty, and the consequences of actions taken long ago." Ethan had gritted his teeth, the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him. "Well, it's time for the truth to come out. I need to know what really happened." As he left the cafe, Ethan felt a fire igniting within him. He needed answers, and he was determined to find them, even if it meant digging deep into his family's past. The mention of that name on Mr. Collins's phone had stirred something in him, something he couldn't quite place but felt was crucial to the unraveling mystery. With resolve, he made his way to the local library, a place he had frequented as a child but hadn't visited in years. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he stepped inside, the scent of aged paper and wood filling his nostrils. Rows upon rows of books lined the shelves, but Ethan had a specific mission in mind. He approached the archives section, his heart pounding with anticipation. He spent hours poring over dusty newspapers, sifting through articles that chronicled the scandal that had haunted his family for decades. The yellowed pages detailed the accusations against his mother, the fallout within the Collins family, and the subsequent estrangement that had ensued. Each article revealed a little more about the tangled web of relationships and betrayals, but none of it brought him closer to understanding the truth. Ethan's eyes skimmed over an article titled "The Collins Heirloom, A Family in Turmoil." The piece recounted the events surrounding the necklace's disappearance during a family gathering, the accusations that had flown, and the tragic rift that had formed as a result. It was as if he were reading a tale of a bygone era, yet it felt so personal, so connected to his own life. He continued his search, fueled by a growing desperation. He had to find the hidden diary mentioned in one of the articles, a diary that supposedly contained evidence clearing his mother's name. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the library's floor, Ethan felt a surge of determination. He couldn't leave without finding something substantial. "Excuse me," he called out to the librarian, an older woman with glasses perched on her nose. "Do you have any records or archives related to the Collins family? Specifically, anything about a diary or personal writings?" She looked up from her desk, a hint of recognition flickering in her eyes. "We do have some records, but they're not well organized. You might have to dig a bit." Ethan thanked her and set to work. The librarian led him to a small room filled with boxes and old filing cabinets. He began sifting through the contents, his heart racing with each new discovery. As he opened boxes filled with clippings and photographs, he felt like an archaeologist unearthing long-buried secrets. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan stumbled upon a small, leather-bound book, its cover cracked with age. He opened it cautiously, his heart racing. The handwriting was familiar, the loops and swirls unmistakably belonging to his mother. His breath caught in his throat as he read the first few lines. She spoke of her love for her family, her struggles with the accusations, and her desire to clear her name. But as he delved deeper, his excitement turned to dread. The entries hinted at a conspiracy, much larger than he had anticipated. There were names mentioned, connections to the Collins family that he had never known existed. This could change everything, he muttered to himself, flipping through the pages with a sense of urgency. He scanned for references to the necklace, and as he did, a name jumped out at him. Victor Collins. Victor, he whispered, the name echoing in his mind. He remembered hearing it in hushed conversations when he was a child, always spoken with a mix of fear and reverence. His heart raced as he realized the implications. Victor Collins wasn't just a name, he was a key player in the events that had led to his mother's disgrace. Ethan's mind spun as he read on. His mother had written about a meeting with Victor, a confrontation that had taken place the night the necklace disappeared. She had claimed to have evidence that could exonerate her, but it seemed that the confrontation had ended in chaos, with Victor vehemently denying any wrongdoing and accusing her of betrayal. I need to confront Mr. Collins again, Ethan thought, feeling a mix of anger and determination. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. He had to know the truth, and he had to make Mr. Collins face it. As he gathered his things, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Pulling it out, he saw a message from an unknown number. Ethan, it's important that we talk. I have information about your mother. His heart raced as he stared at the screen, a sense of foreboding washing over him. Who could this be? Was it someone from his mother's past? He didn't have time to dwell on it. He needed to act fast. He quickly left the library, the diary clutched tightly in his hands. As he walked down the dimly lit street, the city buzzed around him, but he felt isolated in his thoughts. The weight of his family's legacy felt heavier than ever, and the truth was just within reach. He could almost taste it, a bitter sweetness that threatened to unravel everything he thought he knew. Determined to get answers, Ethan headed back to his apartment, his mind racing with possibilities. He couldn't ignore the message, and he couldn't ignore the truth about his mother. Whatever happened next, he was ready to face it. The necklace, the secrets, and the legacy of his family would soon be laid bare, and Ethan was prepared to uncover every last detail. Ethan stood in the dim light of the attic, surrounded by the remnants of his mother's life. Dust motes danced lazily in the beams of sunlight, filtering through the small window, illuminating the memories packed away in boxes. He could feel the weight of nostalgia pressing down on him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. His heart raced as he rummaged through old clothes, forgotten toys, and faded photographs. Each item seemed to whisper stories of the past, but he was searching for something more important, the hidden diary that could hold the key to his mother's innocence. Frustration bubbled within him as he tossed aside another old sweater, the fabric worn and moth-eaten. Where could it be? He muttered under his breath. The attic felt suffocating, filled with the ghosts of memories he was desperate to understand. He knew the diary existed. Mrs. Hargrove had mentioned it, and it was supposed to contain evidence that could exonerate his mother. But after searching for what felt like hours, Ethan found himself on the verge of despair. He paused for a moment, leaning against a dusty trunk. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and old paper, and he closed his eyes, allowing memories of his mother to wash over him. He could almost hear her laughter, see her smile, and feel her warmth. "I'll find it, Mom," he whispered, as if she could hear him from wherever she was. As if spurred by his determination, his eyes fell upon a small, ornate box tucked away in the corner, half hidden beneath a pile of forgotten treasures. Ethan's heart raced as he approached the box. It was intricately carved, the wood polished and gleaming, a striking contrast to the surrounding clutter. He knelt down, brushing off the dust with trembling fingers. The box had no keyhole, just a simple clasp that seemed to beckon him. With a gentle tug, the clasp opened, and he lifted the lid with cautious anticipation. Inside lay a collection of letters, some yellowed with age, others still crisp and new. Stacks of photographs were piled haphazardly, revealing moments frozen in time. His fingers brushed over the letters, and he quickly scanned the first one. It was addressed to someone named Margaret, a name he didn't recognize. Frowning, he moved to the next letter, his heart pounding faster with each passing second. The second letter sent a chill down his spine. It was addressed to Mr. Collins. "Dear Mr. Collins," it began, "I hope this letter finds you in good spirits. There are matters, delicate matters, that require our attention. The necklace holds more than mere sentimental value. It carries the weight of our family's legacy." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This was it, the connection he had been searching for. His mother had known something about the necklace, something that could unravel the web of deceit surrounding his family. He continued reading, his eyes scanning the elegant script. "I am aware of the allegations surrounding the theft, and I assure you I had nothing to do with it. The truth is buried beneath layers of betrayal and lies. I can no longer remain silent." His heart raced as he realized that his mother had been embroiled in a scandal that stretched far beyond what he had imagined. Ethan's mind raced with questions. What had his mother known? Why had she never mentioned this letter to him? He flipped through the remaining letters, searching for clues, but his heart sank as he found nothing more than expressions of regret and pleas for understanding. Suddenly, the silence of the attic was shattered by the shrill ringing of his phone. Startled, Ethan fumbled to pull it from his pocket, his pulse quickening as he saw Mr. Collins's name flash on the screen. He answered, his voice shaky. "Mr. Collins?" "Ethan, thank God you picked up," Mr. Collins said, his voice strained. "You need to come back. There's something you don't know about the necklace. And your mother." "What do you mean?" Ethan's stomach twisted in knots. "I found letters that—" "Just meet me at the office. It's urgent," Mr. Collins interrupted, his tone sharp and urgent. "Please, Ethan, it's about your mother's past. Time is of the essence." Before Ethan could respond, the line went dead. He stared at the phone, his heart pounding in his chest. What could be so urgent? What did Mr. Collins know that he wasn't saying? Anxiety clawed at him as he weighed his options. He could feel the weight of the letters in his hand, the secrets they held pressing down on him. He had to go back. Minutes later, Ethan found himself driving through the bustling streets, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The office building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the orange hues of the setting sun. He parked hurriedly, his heart racing as he stepped inside, the familiar smell of polished wood and fresh coffee enveloping him. Mr. Collins was waiting for him in his office, his expression a mix of concern and urgency. "Ethan, I'm glad you came," he said, gesturing for him to sit. "There's so much we need to discuss." Ethan took a seat, his palms sweating. "I received your call. What's going on? What did you mean about the necklace and my mother?" Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair as he took a deep breath. "I've been trying to piece together the events surrounding the necklace for years. After our last conversation, I realized that there were things I should have told you sooner. Your mother, she was caught in a web of deceit, and I fear she was trying to protect you." "What do you mean?" Ethan pressed, his voice barely above a whisper. "The necklace was stolen during a family gathering, but there were others involved, people who wanted to blame your mother to cover their own tracks. She might have had evidence that could clear her name, and I think she was close to revealing the truth before she passed." Ethan's mind raced. "You said she wrote letters. What else did she know?" Mr. Collins slid a letter across the table, his eyes locked onto Ethan's. "This letter was meant for me, but it never reached me until now. I believe it contains details about the night of the theft and the people who were there. Your mother was trying to protect you, but in doing so, she may have sealed her own fate." Ethan's heart sank as he grasped the gravity of the situation. "And those people? Are they still a threat?" Mr. Collins nodded gravely. "I believe so. They have a vested interest in keeping the truth buried. If they find out that you're looking into this, they won't hesitate to silence you. You need to be careful." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated. "What do I do now?" he asked, feeling overwhelmed. "First, we need to read the letter together. It may provide us with the next steps. But we must tread carefully. We cannot let anyone know we're investigating this," Mr. Collins warned, his voice low and serious. Ethan nodded, determination flooding his veins. He reached for the letter, ready to uncover the truth about his mother and the necklace that had ignited this entire journey. As he unfolded the letter, a sense of purpose washed over him. No longer would he be a passive observer in his mother's story. He would unravel the secrets that bound their families together, no matter the cost. "Let's find out what your mother knew," Mr. Collins said, leaning closer as they began to decipher the words that could change everything. Ethan's heart raced, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through him. The truth was finally within reach, and he was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead.